We are now recording, so welcome to our optional kind of drop-in class session. I did tell students they could kind of drop in and out, so we might have some people, at least here on the Pacific time, who are just getting off work, so they may pop in a little bit later. So feel free to come and go as you need. My agenda was to check in with you guys, kind of feel out what your questions were, give you some tips, show you where to find things, and help anybody get registered who needs to. But I see that all 4 of you are registered, so that's a good thing, right? So let's maybe start out. I'm going to take a couple notes here. But let's just start out to see what kinds of questions you might have or concerns that you might have about, or what you hope to learn from today's session. Okay. So Kevin, do you want to start off? You and I've been chatting a little bit online, right?
Yeah, I think I'm getting things figured out. Just trying to find the time this week to really get in and dive in to see what's in there and what I need to do. So it's always a little apprehensive starting a new class, not quite sure how it's going to go, what the expectations are. So I think I was able to get registered for the online business game. Okay.
It looks good.
Okay, that's good. So I haven't been in really to orient myself with that very much yet. I plan on doing that this weekend. But other than
good.
kind of want what a class looks like this term.
Okay, good. Soon, what kind of questions that you might have or anything you would like to ask or learn about?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I don't really have any questions. I'm just really confused about this strategy game.
That is 100% normal, and if you weren't, I'd be concerned. And that's not because I'm a masochist, right? So just saying. Hi, Will, welcome. So we're just kind of going around the room asking if people have specific questions or concerns. So Dennis, we've been working together before, so anything you want to raise?
I guess my only question would be, is the class going to be mainly focused on the strategy game, or is there going to be, I guess, more content? Okay,
absolutely. Well, I can start with that question, actually. Well, maybe I should get all the questions. So let me check in with Wendy. Wendy, what about you? So if you're talking, you're muted. And if you're having trouble with your audio, you can also use the chat feature. So while you're working on that, I'm going to jump over to Will. So Will, I just asked if people had any specific questions, concerns, anything like that that they want to know about, or are they just feeling completely overwhelmed or just hanging out?
It's Friday. I feel like I have a lot of homework to catch up on, so I'll be hanging out, but yeah.
Okay. Well, I just checked and you're registered for the game too. So one of the things that after we get everything taken care of for you guys and give you some tips, then I'll stay on the air. You guys can drop off if you want. So in case new people come in and they need to get registered, I can help walk them through that, right? So we'll do all of the regular stuff first. So, okay, I think I'll start with Dennis's question, which is a really good question. So both instructors who teach this, we tend to merge everything together. So what you're reading, the discussions, the weekly video lectures that are already posted for each week, and then some additional resources. And we're going to jump into Canvas here in just a sec so you can see what I'm talking about. and the game. They're all kind of interrelated. So yes, there is quite a bit of content that we're going through, and you'll see that each week the video lecture and the additional resources, which are usually kind of some short videos that may have an example of a company of, so if we're talking about diversification, I think there's a blurb in there about GE or something in a week farther down the term. So you can see how some of this applies since it is an online class. This week, and I do apologize, the video is longer than usual because I did some content work and then I jumped in with kind of a walkthrough for you of the things that are really important for the game so that you got a little bit of both. So feel free to utilize any or all of those that you like. Also, we'll be talking when I'm talking about content, I'm going to be referring to some of the things that you're doing in the game. And then if people want, when they get in the game and they start getting frustrated, I'm happy to hold some weekly sessions where people can drop in. And then we'll kind of, we'll tie together what's going on in the game with what we're learning in class, okay? So yeah, there's quite a bit of content. But fortunately, the reading is not, it's not oppressive in any way. The majority of your time will be spent initially in the game. And that's why initially you'll see the reading is a little bit lighter because quite honestly, what happens after the practice rounds in the first few rounds will pretty much dictate how you do at the end. So if you make some detrimental decisions in, like, say, weeks 1 through 4, it's going to be really hard for you to dig out of those, right? So you want to learn as much as you can early on. The other thing is once you get a strategy going and you jump in and you know what you're doing, then it's just like clockwork. All you're doing is updating. Each week you just update your decisions to stick to your strategy. So heavy lifting early on. And I'm sorry to hear, Will, that you already have a lot of homework, because one of the reasons that I like this game is it front loads a lot of the work when a lot of students are, you know, still getting textbooks for classes and, you know, there's not a lot going on. And then like week 3, it hits the fan. So sorry about that.
No worries. I got some personal stuff going on. So
Yeah.
my due to COVID, my wife is now unexpectedly traveling. So I have some extra daddy duties through Sunday. But
Wow.
got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
My youngest is 6. I have boy-girl twins that are 16, and then my oldest, which is kind of what's going on with mom, is in Tucson with mom right now, getting resettled into University of Arizona, where she's attending.
Wow.
But my daughter was supposed to go with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's dad on this trip, but they unexpectedly had a COVID incident in the family, and so they put themselves on the no-fly list. So my wife ended up picking up the slack.
Yeah, it's hard. I can't remember which class or which discussion, but I have grown kids with kids, and I had actually, we have a family has a beach house, and I'd actually quarantined there for 14 days so I could go over for a week and help my daughter and her little guys, because they were Zooming, and one was in kindergarten, one was in 1st grade, and like they can't read the instructions in kindergarten. So, right? And then they needed technical help, and both my daughter and son-in-law are working full-time. They're in Zoom, and I was teaching, so we had 5 Zoom things going at once. It was pretty crazy. So that was only a little snapshot of what you're going through. Plus teenagers, I mean, like, just put on the seatbelt and hang on, right? So, all right. Okay, let's see. So, hey, Wendy, we kind of jumped over you. I don't know if you got your audio going or not, but if you did, and if you have questions, would you like to join in? Okay, no worries. All right. I am going to go ahead and and share my screen. So you should be seeing right now you should be seeing our homepage. And this should be the view that you all would see when you log in. Okay. So the dots here mean I have something in them that I haven't read yet. So cool. But I'm going to jump over to the module section here. My internet's not the greatest, by the way. So there are a lot of things in here. Here, if you click on this in the welcomes, the top section, there are these 3 things. Have you guys been here yet?
A little bit.
Okay. So the first one is your actual player's guide, which you can download from the BSG site. It's a PDF, but I've loaded it here, so if you're kind of on the move, you can pull it up even on a phone if you need to. But notice the player's guide is 40 pages. And let me tell you, this is some dense reading. Just show you. It's single spaced and it's dense, okay?
And it's semi-technical.
And yes, I would say somewhat is an understatement, right? And it'll kind of put you to sleep at first when you're reading it, but you really do. So what I do, and I mentioned this in one of my opening video welcomes, is I print it out, which I'm not big on paper, but in this case I am. I highlight, I make notes in the margin, and it helps me find stuff. Now, the thing I like about the virtual one is that you can actually go in and search. If you go into the BSG site, this is the PDF, so you know. Anyway, but that is a helpful thing to have. The other thing is here's our schedule. So it's front and center. It's also loaded elsewhere in the modules, and then each week for each module I tell you, I remind you when it's due. So the first practice round is due this. Is that Sunday? Today's the 8th, yes. Sunday at the end of the night. And I know that's really fast, but honestly, I just want you guys in there pulling levers. And then we'll process that, and you can see how on Sunday night when it closes at 11:59 p.m., the game will automatically process, and it says it takes 15 minutes, but it usually takes about 5. And then you'll see the results of your industry. You are competing only within your own industry. There's 3 industries. And then you can jump into practice round 2 and start making decisions and start looking at the reports. So I really wanted you to have reports early on so you could kind of look at those, right? And then this just lists all your decisions. They are, until we get down here at the end, they're all on Sunday night. I heard what online students had to say, which is that it's really hard for them when they have stuff due in the middle of the week. It may have been one of you who also said that. This is a video tour. It's 10 minutes long, which of course you can watch at faster speed. And it kind of highlights the first things that you have to do, like register. Okay, now you're done with that. Now do this, now do that, right? So if you've got 10 minutes, turn it on and have it playing in the background and check it out. And then this is a PowerPoint presentation, which kind of walks you through the whole thing. Just different ways that you can get the information that you need, right? So if we go farther down, here's where you register, but you already all did. So I did not check when you joined us, Rob. Okay, Rob, you haven't registered yet. So at the end of all this, if you want me to help you with that or walk through that, we can do that, okay? So here's where you'll find the video lecture for the week. And this is where that content is that we were talking about. So this is, as mentioned, a little bit harder, a little bit longer because I do Canvas tour, you know, my top hits on Canvas, my pet peeves, and content, and then some game highlights. And then these are those extra resources I talked about. I also always load just the PowerPoint. Some people like that. So whatever works, right? Okay. But as far as the game, you'll notice that here's the reminder. Each week we'll have one of these. It says practice round or decision round, due when it's due. So there's nothing else. Like if you click on that, there's nothing there. This is just to remind you, right? And at first I'll try to send out some reminders so that people don't get caught unaware. And this is that player's guide I told you about. This is another place where I have it loaded. Same thing we just looked at. So no big deal, right? But again, sometimes in Canvas, I load things redundantly. So depending on how you find it, it's a little bit different. Now, one thing I want you to think about as you're going through and reading the first chapter or two is I want you to think about what strategy, business strategy that you're going to take. And so, you know, whether it's, you'll read about the various strategies. I also cover it in the video lecture. And so you're going to do an assignment here. We're actually going to, in a short paper, you're going to tell me what your actual strategy you're going to pursue and why and what that looks like, okay? So that'll help you get started. So you're going to come up with, you know, what is my company? What's my mission? What are my core values? You know, am I about saving people a buck? Am I about getting athletic shoes out to everybody? Am I going to be an elite shoemaker? You know, who am I? What's my company? And so you'll work through those things, okay? And that really helps you with the game because from then on, once you come up with this strategy, that really dictates all the decisions that you're going to make. So should be helpful, which is why we do it early. And so that's due the end of the second week. Okay. So then pretty much you'll just notice everything is clicking along the same way. Any questions on any of this? Nope.
I've got a
Good.
couple questions. I don't know if they're related or off topic a little bit.
Okay.
Talking to a friend of mine who's done some of these through his education, are we going to be in teams or are we kind of running a company on our own?
So in this particular course, you are running a company by yourself. So this game can be done both ways. So if you were in teams, I'd probably run more rounds and they would come at you more rapidly. So both of us who teach this typically run our face-to-face classes in teams and our online individually, although I think I may try teams next time online, but teams are, it's a little bit much. The other instructor tried it once for this game online and it got a little bit hairy. So right now we're doing individuals. So you can dismiss all the stuff in the instructions on the game site when it talks about if you're in a team or how you can chat with your fellow teammates, stuff like that.
Okay, and then it's set up like a competition, is that correct?
Oh yeah.
And
Yes.
so my friend, again, telling me horror stories of his experience, is this a pass-fail if the game doesn't go well? Are we retaking the course? How does that look in the end?
Okay, so I'm going to take you to one of my favorite places on Canvas. And this is why really kind of checking out all these different links is helpful. So I am in modules. I'm at the top of the module page. I'm going to click on calendar. And as you can see here, by the way, this is a really quick place that you can go. Like, let's say you're running around, it's work, or you're chasing kids, or it's late at night, and you're like, oh my gosh, do I have something due? Click on this. It gives you everything that's due and everything you have to do in the entire class, when it's due, and how many points it is, okay? So as you're making decisions, you'll notice there's no point total, right? So your company's strategy that you're going to do that you'll use in the game comes with grading points. right? And then as you get farther down, at the very end, you're going to do what we call a stockholders presentation. And you're going to do that within the discussion. Then you also do it to the discussion forum. It's basically a PowerPoint presentation with voiceover or a video. And you're going to talk about what your strategy was, what went well, what didn't go well, what you do differently. So it doesn't really matter whether you went bankrupt or whether you won the competition. It's just your understanding and your analysis of how it went. And then you are given an overall score for the strategy game. And it's rolled into a lot of different things, right? So, and that's in the strategy game on the online site, right? But it's only 15% of the total in the class, right? So it's a very minimal amount. So let's say you did a horrible job and you basically got, 60%, right? Or whatever. So, or you got 50%, that's 75 points. You can still get an A in the class, okay? If you do everything else well. So again, back to the point of content. So the content, the things you're working on are things that you're gonna, that are related to the game. And then hopefully will help you through. But it's enough points that it will impact your score. So you don't want to have to worry about being 100% on everything else. Now, I will warn you, there are 2 business strategy game quizzes. The first one is here in week 2. They're only worth 25 points, which is 2.5%, but most people totally bomb those out. Even though it's open, it's based on the player's manual, the player's guide, and you have total access to that, and it's not timed. People still bomb. So the reason those are in there, they're both on the player's guide, is to the questions that you're going to be asked are ones that are important to success in the game, which forces you to go find those answers. And it kind of is another point where it hammers home what's important in that 40-page document. Okay. So I don't know if that is a relief or not to you, Kevin.
It is a little bit. So my friend he was doing his MBA, and part of their deal is they did a game like this with, it was an international competition through their course, and they had to be in the top so many percent or they would have to do it all over again. And so I'm feeling a little better that we're not that intense.
So you are, okay. So your grading is your place, in terms of who you're competing against. There are typically 10 of you in each industry. So, and you do get the more, so you can all get really high scores. It's based on how well you meet the stockholders' expectations and best in industry. So if you're all doing really, really well, it doesn't matter if you're in first place or 8th place, as long as you've had a strong finish. So that's good, right? But your scores are reported globally, and along with all the scores of every other student who's in the game at that time. And you guys will end up seeing, some of you will have top 10% finishes, top 5% finishes. You'll get an email that calls you out for that. So you can see where you stand up against everybody. And they lump them together. So undergrads and MBAs are competing against each other. I will tell you that every term for both instructors, we have always had people finishing at the top there. So you guys are awesome. All right. So that's what he's talking about, right? But I'm not grading you on how you place internationally. Yeah. Okay. All right. Those are really good questions. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to jump over here to what I thought I was going to jump to. Hold on. Okay. let's take a look quickly at the website. Now you're going to see what I see, which is the instructor view. Yours is different, okay? But if you guys don't mind, so let's see, who sees any of you here? So Will, do you mind if I go into your company?
Go for it.
Okay. So you and I can't ever be, I can go into various companies so I can see what you're doing more intently, but we can't be there at the same time, okay? Okay, so this is kind of where you are as a student, and some of you have already been wandering around, right? But you know, your corporate lobby is where all the juicy stuff is. Here's where your calendar is. Don't forget to pay attention to interest rates, because at some point, if you have to borrow money, that's really important. And the higher your financial scores, the lower your interest rates will be. So for instance, your part of the game scoring has to do with, return on investment, your stockholder price, et cetera, and your bond rating. So if you can keep these things really healthy, then what'll happen is your cost to borrow money will go down, right? So we don't have any reports yet, which is too bad. So probably what I'll do is remind everybody once we close that first practice round, which reports are really important to get into. So let's, this is very different for me. Okay, here we are, schedule and calendar. So in here, where am I going if I want to make decisions? Oh, here. That big green button, right?
Yeah, isn't it up? There you go.
Right. Okay. So, Will, have you made any decisions?
I have not.
Okay, good. Okay, because I didn't want to give it away if you had, right? Okay. So, here's your menu up here, and you can just start marching through these decisions one at a time, and that should work fine. When you close, this right here is the one, this competitive intelligence. So there are a couple, and I mentioned this in one of my tips for success. So, you want to go into the footwear industry report because you can get information there on all the companies. So that's the scoreboard that you'll see. So you can see where everybody ranks. Right now you're all the same because we're all starting out even, right? But then, so for here, after the rounds close, you'll see where everybody else is. So you can see what the average is and then how you compare against the average. And then, right? And then this is some of the scoring. So investor expectations, invest in industry. And you want to get as many points here as you can. So this is where the competition part comes in a little bit, Kevin. So if you have the highest in something, you may get extra points here. So it's just to reward people. There's also one called the Leapfrog Award, which is if you've done really badly and then you jump ahead quite a bit in terms of yourself, your own company, then you get more, you get points for that, for turning the company around. So this competitive one talks, it lists, so up here, when you're looking at report, am I totally confusing you guys, by the way? No? Yes? Okay. So it always defaults to North America first, but as you can see, there are 4 markets. So we'll just stay here in North America. And then you can take a look, when you look at these reports, at where everybody is, right? So you can look over here in terms of the shoes you're selling online, the ones you're selling as wholesale, private label. And then down here, this is the cool place. So for each market that you're selling shoes in terms of what kind of shoe, like wholesale or online, your company has a color, and you'll have a bubble over here. Now, right now, everybody's on the same bubble because you have the same results. But let's say, company A goes really high up here. These are the y-axis is price and quality, and the x-axis is the number of models. So let's say company A decides they're going to be a niche player. They're going to be like the Ferrari of shoes. So they're going to charge a high price, high quality, and they're not going to offer very many models. They're just so they would be up here. So when you see this, you can think, okay, I know what their strategy is. And why is that important? Because you want to know where everybody else is. And if there's another company whose bubble is right next to yours, you guys are going head to head. And you have to make some decisions, right? And how you're going to do that, if you're going to continue, if you're going to change your strategy, whatever. So these bubbles will become super, super important. The size of the bubble reflects the size of your market share. So anyway, so this is a pretty interesting place. This is actually, I go here first before I go anywhere else because I like the visual, but you can do anything pretty much that you want. Okay, so the decision rounds, you just got to get in here and get started. So the stuff that's grayed out, that's where we are, okay? Down here, it shows you, here are the things you can change. So you can change the base weight. So, if Will wants to give them an increase, he can increase it by a percentage. Or let's say he wants to leave the base salary, but he's all about incentive pay. So he's going to increase the incentive pay by 25 cents or whatever. So it'll be $1.25. So you do this for each of these markets here. And then as you go down, you'll see here, it makes some projections, right? So it will help you kind of figure out where you're going. One of the things that I would like you to pay attention to is that the game is going to say, if you make these changes, the chances are you'll make this much profit and you'll sell these many shoes, blah, 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 right? That's if you're the only one in the world competing, because it can't see, it doesn't know what other companies, where they are, what decisions they're making. So it's, if you're in a vacuum, it's a guess. And it's always, the projection they give you is almost always better than reality. So if it says that you're going to sell every shoe, you're going to probably stock out. So, or you won't sell every shoe. So you'll get a feel for those projections, but just know that they are very crude and very rudimentary, okay? That's one tip I have for you, okay?
Do the numbers here address import-export and exchange rates?
Yeah, so yes, they take that into consideration. And when you go to, I don't know how to get back to the corporate, maybe I'll just do this. When you go back to the main page, that's listed there. Well, somewhere, I don't know where your guys is, you'll see it. But when you're making your decisions, you have to decide how many you're going to sell in each market. So let's say your factory is in the United States and you want to sell a whole bunch in the Middle East and Africa. So then you have to take it, the game will take into consideration those exchange rates and transportation costs. And you'll see the transportation costs. And then on the financial page, I think that's where you'll see the exchange rates. Let's see if that's right. Okay, so here's your interest rate. And these are some key financial things like that we look at, like here's your debt to asset ratio, your risk of default. And then, so here's last year. And then as Will changes his decisions, these will change. So once you've made a bunch of decisions, you keep going down to the bottom of each screen and it'll give you some projections. But again, remember, they're not always exact, okay? Yes, and I'm still not sure where it is on yours, but, oh, scoreboard. No, we were already there. Has anybody found that? I get a whole bunch more stuff than you guys do. So, okay, so that's probably enough maneuvering around. The best thing you can do is just go into your decisions menu and start moving around, start playing with stuff. I think it helps if you have an idea of, I want to be this kind of company, and try that out in the first round, see how it goes, see the difference it makes, and what has impact, what doesn't have impact. And read the manual, read the manual, read the manual. So when I've asked students at the end of the term, what was the most important thing, what's the most important advice that they could give somebody starting out, they would say, read the player's guide. And then you should read the player's guide, and you should read it again and again and again. Sorry, I know it's like reading postal regulations, but at some point, every time you read it, you get something else out of it, which is why I highlight and make notes, or, you know, I'll put, oh, this is where this is, so it's easy for me to find, okay? And just know that everybody else is in the same boat, right? Okay. All right. Questions?
Yeah, I got a question. We have 1 or 2 weeks of practice round, right? So after those 2 weeks, is everything going to kind of reset and start from fresh again?
Goes all the way back to where it is right now when you registered. Yeah. So, and it really ticks off some people who did really well in the practice rounds. But that's why I said, you know, in my video, get in there, play around, pull some levers, you know, see if things really have an impact, or if you're making decisions that cancel each other out. So obviously, if you do too much crazy stuff, you won't know what causes what. But if you decide, say, you want to be a low-cost producer, then, you know, there are certain decisions you'll make along those lines. You're not going to pour a lot of high-quality stuff in there, right? So there'll be some decisions that you'll have to make in terms of your people as we march along, like with your human resources. So am I going to do overtime? Am I going to hire new people? Am I going to lay people off? You know, what am I going to do? What's going to have the least impact, the most impact? And obviously you want it to be a good impact. Okay. It really is fun once you get in there, I promise.
How are factors like demand managed? Are there events that happen, or is it more of like a progression? More and more shoes are needed, and therefore there's more market space that we can enter.
Right. So in that, when you get to that part in the player's guide, it will tell you that the demand in year 10 is XYZ, and that it will increase a certain percentage every year. There's a growth curve for that, that projection for the demand. But after, I think it is year 5 or 6, then the demand levels off and it's less. So what that means is that if you're trying to make a move in terms of growing your market share, you want to do it in those early years when the whole market, the demand is growing, not when it's leveling off, right? So yes, and then in terms of your own company, you can increase that demand for your shoes versus other shoes based on the marketing things that you do and the features that you offer. So if you can put warranties on, you can give rebates to people. So you can hire celebrities when you get to the marketing place. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. You just kind of have to remember, don't do what you think is just cool, do what matches your strategy. So that kind of is full circle back to think about company strategy that you're going to want to do, okay? Sorry, I kind of interrupted you, Will. Did that answer your question?
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much.
Of course. Other questions? Okay, so Jared, I didn't check when you came in. So you haven't registered. Rob hasn't registered. Has anybody else not registered?
I have registered.
Oh, you just did?
Or I did a couple days ago.
Oh, I missed that. My apologies. I was trying to check and see. Okay.
I registered last night too.
Oh, you did?
Rob.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
At
I'm
least I hope
behind
we
the curve.
did.
No, that's good. That's good. Because that was one of the things I said I would help with at the end if people needed help. So here's kind of what I'd leave you with. Don't get too stressed out, but figure out how to carve out time to continually reading the manual, even if you do it in sections. So you feel really strong in a section, read that section a couple of times, whatever works for you. But I mean, I've seen when I taught in person, I've seen teams, people come in and they have paper guides that are all mangled up and they've got coffee spills and they've been carrying these things around, for weeks, but they're using them. And those are usually the people who do pretty well. So there's no hidden magic. Okay, a couple of disclaimers.
Can I ask a
yes.
question real quick? Sorry, I came in late because I had another class that also had a Zoom meeting that happened to be today at 5.
Yeah.
Is the strategy we're supposed to use for the game based off of our industry and company, or is it the same for everyone and it's just arbitrary numbers and letters?
So no, you get to choose what kind of company you want to run, what kind of strategy you want to have. And you're not going to know anybody else's strategy, although that's why I go to that competitive analysis report that has the bubbles. I don't know if you were there during that part, because then you can kind of see what people's strategies are by their decisions. But in week 2, at the end of week 2, you have an assignment due, and that's where you're going to write down what kind of company you're going to run, what the strategy is, what the mission is, what your values are, sort of map out so that will help you. And that's when we reset back to 0 and we start the regular round. So you'll have a strategy. And then I'll go in when I grade it and give you tips if I think it's like a little bit off in some way. But then as you're making these decisions, then you can follow your strategy. And one of the problems that happens with company managers, which is what you are, you're running a company, is that they see other people competing with them, so they change in the midstream. And then that gets tough, so they change again. And then they've got decisions that are all over the map, and that is not good. But so you kind of want to stick to the strategy unless you see a huge obstacle and then you want to tweak it. So maybe let's say you go low cost and you're kind of the Walmart, but then, you know, there's 2 other people in that space. So maybe then you decide you're going to go best value, which is more like a target, where, and you'll see all of this in the reading and in my video lectures. So maybe you're going to still be the best price for the best value. So you're still going to try to keep costs down, but you're going to add in a little more quality and raise the price a teeny bit. So that gets you away from those other 2 people. But you can watch that and see how you do. So.
Okay. And I know it's supposed to be like each decision period is like a year, and it's 10 decision periods. How many is it for the 2-week practice run? Is that like 2 years?
Yes. So you'll do practice run 1 and then practice run year 2. Then it goes resets. And because we're not semesters, we're only quarters, we only have 8 regular rounds.
Okay.
Okay. And because the industry grows so much in the early few rounds, actually the last few rounds, you're kind of locked into whatever you're doing, because if you've got a lot of market share and you have a lot of visibility and you have a strong brand and people want your shoe, you're just going to keep selling. Likewise, if you've run into trouble, you ran into financial trouble, you're going to struggle because you're not going to have any cash flow to pay for more marketing or to pay your employees more money so that they'll do a better job or give them incentives. So after a few years, you're starting to coalesce where you're going to end up. So I guess what I'm saying is the last couple of rounds is really about plug and play.
Okay. All right. I think I understand that then. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'll send out a little note to the class, but one of the thoughts I had was we could do a session a week as a drop-in if people have questions about how they're doing in the game or if they're running into problems. And you know, Jared, we could do the other time that people really liked was Thursday at 6. So we could do that instead. We have the same number of people sign up for that. And then it would just be like, it's kind of like open office hours. And somebody could just pop in if they have a question and pop back out, and I'd still be here. So I might try that for at least a few weeks while you guys are getting started. But then, you know, you're welcome to also set a private quick hangout or ask questions or email. The one thing I won't do is tell you what to do. So I'll tell you to go read the guide. I will give you I'll ask you some questions if you ask why I don't understand why I'm having trouble here. I might ask you some questions that'll send you in a direction, but you still have to make the decision of what you're going to do. Okay. All right. Anything else that you'd like to talk about or ask about before we sign off?
Yeah, I've got a question real quick. What kind of time commitment are we looking at as far as making decisions in the game? Do we go in and update our decisions once a week? Are we in there constantly monitoring it and changing the numbers? How does that work?
It's an individual sport. So some people, and it depends on your other classes and your family and your time commitments. I think maybe when you and I were talking, you mentioned that weekdays are really hard. You do most of yours on the weekend. Was that you, Kevin? So some people, so we close Sunday night. For those who have a lot of stuff going on towards the end of the week, you know, like some intense classes, like maybe calculus or something, they can go in on Monday or Tuesday when it's more downtime and work on them. And every time you go in and make a decision, save. There's a save button in the upper right corner. And then, but then every time you change it, make sure you save it. And then when it closes on Sunday, the last save you have is where you are. So some people like to go in and do it all at once. Some people do, okay, I'm going to go in and do this much, and then I'll come in on Wednesday and do this. It just depends. You'll spend more time in the first few weeks.
Okay, so we can go in maybe Monday, Tuesday, make some changes, see how it goes, maybe adjust it a little Thursday, It's not like there's a set time where you have to go in, make your one decision, and then be done with it.
No, the problem is you won't see how you're doing because you can't, your company, you have the week to make all your decisions, but we don't, once we close that week, that's when you see how you did against everybody else. So when you get those projections, it's still only in a vacuum with your company.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. And what they're measuring it against is what the average would be, what the guess is for the average. So they're measuring you against the average. But if somebody goes above average or below average, that obviously changes how you fit in. Yeah. So I think each of you will have your own personal style of what works for you. And we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Well, it was nice to meet you guys. Some of you have already met before. We've worked together in class, and that's been fun. So don't be a stranger, you guys. I'm always saying this. I think that fretting, as in worrying, is overrated. So if you have a question and you're worried about whether or not it's a good question or whether the teacher's going to think I'm, you know, not very bright or whatever, oh my gosh, just ask the question, right? Because think of all the time you waste. And I think the only bad question is the one that you're not going to ask. So the other thing is, if you have general questions, like you're struggling in the game, put it in questions and sharing, which is at the top of the discussions page. And it's also on the landing page on modules all the time. And it goes out to everybody in the class. And if I see it, I answer your questions so everybody else can see it. And sometimes the student will see it first and they'll say, oh, hey, I tried this, or have you thought about that? Or here's a really good article about this. So, you know, you can help each other along, but you're still competitors, right? Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, as far as I'm concerned, you're free to go. If anybody wants to stay behind and ask any specific questions, I'm happy to hang around for a little bit. But thank you. Thank you for giving up part of your Friday evening.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.
Kevin, do you want to hang on?
I was looking for the leave button unless
Did
unless you need something.
you send me an email about setting up an appointment?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, never mind then. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.